um, about color and the color wheel, right? So we are working with pigment. All this is pigment. Pigment was originally made from bugs, right, and minerals. If you go, has anybody here been to India ever? Or maybe you've seen films where in India they have like these big baskets with this powder of color, right? And because they do a lot of textiles and dyes there, they do batiks and things like that. Many of them are made from plants and minerals as they used to be. These, however, are acrylics, and so they will vary a lot in color. You can see the yellows are quite different here. You can see these reds are quite different, and the blues also are quite different one from the other. And so with acrylics, because it is an artificial base, they are actually based out of plastic. They were invented in Mexico, and then they were bought by a company, I think it was Duron here in the US. And if this little thing here dries, you will be able to, in a few hours, and for sure by tomorrow, just pick it off. It'll be like a piece of plastic. Unfortunately, it doesn't come off your clothes that easily. But people will also like do all this acrylic, they'll spread it, do a couple layers on a sheet that's maybe sort of plastically. You could actually do it on this table, and after a few days you can peel it off, and it's called an acrylic skin, and people use that to make mixed media art with. Whenever I talk about mixed media, by the way, which we will be doing, I mean mixed media still in traditional mode, not mixed media like, you know, on computers. So the primary colors are which? Which are the three primary colors in pigment?
The one you have right now. Red, yellow, blue.
Yeah, but which kind of yellow, red, and blue? But I think that's a good point, the ones I have right now. Which kind of yellow, red, and blue? Who wants to venture a guess out of these that I have here? Which would be most like the three primary colors?
I found that
This yellow?
No, the other one. It's more
This
so
one?
sunny golden. The other one's like a light.
You
I
want
think
the
that
you want the
red.
brighter yellow, not the goldenrod type yellow.
Okay, so we're kind of divided on this?
Yep.
Are we kind of half and half on that? Okay.
I would think that red.
This red?
Mm-hmm.
Who else thinks, or what else?
I think the deepest color
Oh,
is
I meant that one.
This one?
Yeah.
Let me spread them out a little bit.
I
then
think this red,
it might help a little bit too if I spread them out, right?
Yeah.
this red.
No,
This red,
this
this
one.
yellow, and this blue.
Okay, now you, Kyo, you said something that was interesting the other day on Tuesday. Ooh, now I totally, what is it called when you do
RGB.
when you do something wrong with an experiment? You are contaminating it. I contaminated the blue. Okay, so you said RGB.
RGB was for printing. Now it's the like cyan,
Okay.
magenta.
RGB's for mono.
Cyan. Okay, say that again. Cyan.
Cyan, magenta, like yellow, and the
Black.
Yeah, black.
Okay, so here's the thing. The cyan, magenta, and yellow would be, like a cyan would be sort of like this blue right here, okay? That's close to cyan. A magenta is this one over here, which actually is called magenta, okay? And then a truer yellow actually is, for those of you who said this one, would be more like this one, okay? This one is too greenish. So these three really will create all of your, with these three you can actually, this is going outside of traditional color theory, okay? You won't find this in textbooks. But the truth is, if I take this magenta, let me see if I can get this on camera here. If I use this magenta and I begin to add it to the blue, what happened?
Purple.
Purple? I don't want it to get purple, so maybe a little bit more. It should become a blue. Okay, see how it is becoming a little bit of a blue? So this is why on printers, this is what they use, okay? Because this really, with these three, you can create you can create primary colors, which would be, by the way, for your primary colors, it would be, I think some people said, who said this one?
I said that one.
This one? This one is actually called alizarin crimson. This one is the one that's called primary red, which is pink, okay? And then this one is called naphthol red light, which is very orange, right? And then this magenta looks, well, magenta, not red, right? So it can get quite confusing. Then with these blues over here, the one that's a primary blue, yeah, it's this one, which doesn't look too primary to me, right? To me, it would look like this would be more like a primary. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, I figure all your primary color are actually darker form than what we usually think.
Right, so this would be the primary, right? This would be a little bit darker, so that would be more what you would use. So the theory, I'll teach you like the classic color theory would be, we have a circle here in the middle, and then we would take like the blue, the dark, do this brush, this dark blue, which is what looks the most like a primary color, right? Then we would take the yellow, which would be the one that's a little bit warmer, right here. And then we would take the red, closest to the true red that we have, which is actually the alizarin crimson right here. And then in mixing these, need a little bit more. In going this way in the color wheel, we begin to get reds to what?
Blue.
To violets.
Red to violets. We don't have any white here, so we can't really get to pink. But it would be red to violets if I'm mixing these. And you can get many different hues here, okay? And then when you go from the blue, which I just made purple, but let me add some more here. So when you go from the blue to this way, what do you begin to get?
Green.
Greens, different kinds of greens. So darker greens, of course you guys are going to do it much slower, so you can get a lot more different hues, but darker greens to your very lighter greens. And then when we go from here to here, what are we going to get?
Orange.
Orange, right? So I need to drag some of this here, and we will get all kinds over here. Now, the thing with this traditional color wheel is that from here, if you were to go with these three, with the cyan, magenta, and yellow, if you do these three, you would be able to get additional colors. Okay, so your wheel would be a little larger because you would start with these three, and then these would be created by these three. Okay? So I want you to be aware of that. I believe that in time that this will become a better trusted source of color. But right now, this is still what's in all textbooks for like high school and college and everything. But this, it's what's being used. I mean, we use printers all the time, right? And we're transferring from light to pigment. Because if you create something on a computer and then you want to make a print of it, be it on a t-shirt or be it, for a painting or a book or, a manga comic thing, it has to go through a printing process, right? So when it goes through the printer process, when it goes from color and light through a printer, it's going with this. It's not going with this. So the time is changed. Everything's changed.
Actually,
This hasn't really caught up yet.
the monitor display and the printer the outcome, they are quite different. So actually what you see on the screen and it prints out is, it
comes out, yeah, it-
Because it is red, the RGB, usually the monitor display is red, green, blue.
Right, because that's with light, but still in the printer, because we do a lot of these at home, we have a scanner and a printer at home, and I sell my prints, and so we go through all this. You have to calibrate we have to calibrate the scanner, we have to calibrate the printer, and it goes all that. But we're working with these colors. I'm painting with these, but then we calibrate with these, and it gives us a much more expansive wheel, okay? So that is just for you to know. Now, what do I want you guys to do to get more familiar with paint is whatever red you have, okay? I want you to create the wheel, and I want you to see and experiment. You know, what is it that your colors, combining one with the other, what can they make? So if I take, for example, if I'm going to make a green, and if I take, let's see if we can get them to be equal parts. Those look pretty equal, right? So we take equal parts of this yellow, and then we do this blue here. Let's see what kind of green we get there. And then, I don't know, which blue should I try? This one maybe, right? Does that look about the same amount that I had with the other one?
Yeah.
Okay, slight difference there. Do you see it?
That one's a little bit more greener.
Yeah, this a little bit more lime-like. Mm-hmm. Has a little bit more yellow. Okay, let's try it with making some orange. Here. It's a little bit like cooking. That's probably why I like cooking. Okay, let's see. Well, this will be very obvious, so let me take it from here. This one is so pink. It's crazy that they call it a primary red. Really nice, bright orange. So then we're going to try the magenta. I might have added too much in comparison with the other one. But there's still quite a difference, right? Even though I added more yellow to it. That's almost gets like a brownish tint to it.
Like a burnt
You
orange.
see that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So all these different types of greens will create different in tertiary and more. Okay, because then from here you can go on to creating salmon. You can create turquoise. So there's all these different colors that you can create, right? The other thing is today I don't want you to use any white to create your colors, but sometimes when you're having difficulty getting purple from a blue, and let me get this red, which is very orange-like. When you're having difficulty getting purple, see how dark this is? It usually is just that you need more light for it. So usually adding a little bit of white will help. This one was very orange, so of course that would give me more like a brown. See that? But still, I'm stretching it out because that way I use the white of the paper and it helps. But I want you guys to be working with the paint quite thick to do your color wheel. But so you really have to figure out what kind of blues to use. What kind of blue do you think would make the best purple or violet?
The third one. The one you just used. Or no.
This one?
One down.
One down. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
For violet.
Like the darkest one.
Hmm?
Oh, yeah, it's quite dark violet.
You're saying not this one?
It says
This
I
one.
think the first one.
This one? Yeah, it would be this one. It would be this one. What would this color, look how pretty it is. It's beautiful. I love this one. What color do you think from the ones I just mentioned, could this be easy to make?
Green.
Turquoise.
Turquoise.
I would say green.
Turquoise, right? See how it looks? Yeah, you could just, I mean, if you had green, you could add green to it, but let's see with some yellow. We can begin to create it. We would need white, but still, you know, you can see how easily just a little dab of green, you know, took that to a whole different place. Okay. So now to answer Tokyo, so sorry, Kyo, sorry. You told me that's in my head. Okay, Kyo told me about black, you know, and I was saying don't ever add black to darken something. Black, again, is the strongest color of all because it's all these colors mixed together. So if I add black to anything to darken it, it's actually dulling the hue. So as color people, whether you're a painter or illustrator, you don't and should never use black to darken. Instead, you use a different color. Plus, you know, it's, you know, you're being creative. You don't want to dull things. Are you guys familiar with Matisse, Henri Matisse? He's a famous painter. We're going to be working with a lot of his images in this class, and he was a colorist. All he did was paint, and he loved color. Near the end of his life, he was actually very ill, and so he would make cutouts, but still always working with color. And he was one of the people that started a movement of color. It was called the Fauves, which means wild beast in France. And what they did is it was just painters who believed in the power of color and that things did not have to be realistic. It was also sort of like a move against the bourgeois, the rich people, and that though they were the ones that always owned the work, that went to galleries and everything, and they believed that the common people also should be part of art, to make art, also to be able to purchase art. And so they just decided they were going to do whatever they wanted with color. And they were painting fields that instead of being green, they were purple, and trees that were pink. And they were working very much with an understanding of color theory and how colors relate to one another. And they're called the Wild Beasts because when they had their first show in France, it was really groundbreaking, and people did not accept them. They actually closed the gallery. They threw out all of the artists. They told them to remove their work. It appeared in the newspaper, and they called them Wild Beasts. That was what a critic called them, not in a good way. But they adopted that name. And that's been the strongest color school. Until then, there was also a color school here in D.C. that not many people are aware of. And, you know, I mean, color it's magical. It does so much for whatever, you know, like I was saying on Tuesday, for whatever we do. And so we want to be able to keep colors always crisp. So if you've got something that you want to darken, and say you're working with this magenta here, then you might think about, depending on what you're painting, but you might think about adding a little bit of blue. See how that darkens it? And it doesn't dull the hue of it as black will do. Same with gray. So if you want to use black or gray, they should be like accents, and you can always use black or gray to make colors pop by using it around your image, whatever it is that you're painting. Okay? Now, as far as like how to paint, because I did this very quickly, I want to give you all plenty of time to work today in class. But as far as how to paint, if I have, let's see, I'm going to do, like I have this circle right here that I want to paint, right? So the first thing is when you're painting, it's different than watercolor. So here I use quite a lot of water. This is more like closer to watercolor than it is to paint. So when you're painting, you want to take paint on your brush, more like on the tip of the brush, like this. Okay, you never want to do what kids do, which is, you know, or I see sometimes adults too, they mix paint and they do this. Well, first of all, if you're mixing paint like this, you're painting your paper. Okay, so you don't mix paint like that. And then if you want to get, you know, some details, you have this big glob that's not really going to come out very well. Okay, so you want to keep your brush without so much paint. That way you have more control of it. Keep the paint just on the tip, like this, and I often put my pinky down. And then you watch the edge of your brush. So I'm watching this edge right here. What is it doing against the edge that I drew
Following it.
or painted?
Following it.
Yeah, I follow it, but you know, sometimes people will paint here, the inside. I prefer to go very carefully around here and really watching, because the other thing too is when people are painting like this, they tend to have their eyes on here, you know, and we're thinking a lot about what's going on here, and you're, you know, let's say that this is, I don't know, a blueberry that I'm painting. So you're thinking about the blueberry and you're thinking about how to paint it. Instead, think more about the shape and watch the outside of your brush. And that's why, too, I prefer to work with flat brushes. Now I'm running out of paint, so I'll turn my brush and go this way. And just this part, you don't need to be so careful, but always watch the edge of your brush. When they start separating the bristles a little bit, usually means you need a little bit more paint. But again, I can turn it and I can that way get, you know, a nice even layer on there. And then I will probably go back, you know, depending on what I'm doing. This doesn't have any lights or darks, and I go back in here. If it's too wet, did you see how it moved there a little bit? If it's too wet, the paint will move, so it's good to let it dry and then do your second layer on top. And again, of course, I'm working with just one plain color here, but just to show you sort of how to put the paint on there, okay? You need to keep your paints moist, so if they begin to dry out a little bit, what I do is just grab a little water from here and add it and mix it up a little bit, rather than loading your brush with paint or water and then coming here, because then you're going to have your paint too wet. So you have more control if you wet it right here and then go back over here to paint. Let's see, when you're doing details, that's when you would pick up your tiny brush. Let's say I want this to be an eyeball. So then for this, you know, I might go with a smaller brush. Usually the rule would be that whatever is the largest brush that you could use is what's going to work better for you. And so use the correct brush for the job at hand. So a lot of times people feel more comfortable with these little ones because they think, oh, I'm not gonna make a mistake because it's little and I can have more control. It's not gonna work that way, because if I want to make that same circle here, you know, so first of all, look how floppy it is, and it can create lines too. I mean, my job, I've been painting since I was like 17, so for me it's quite easy, you know, to get more control of it. But for some of you, if you've never painted before, it might be harder. And so definitely, and even for me, like I can do a whole painting even with details with this one, especially because it has a little tip right here. So I can go in you know, and just do tiny little things with this if I want. But, you know, just make sure that you're not using a brush that's too small when you're working, because then I see a lot of lines like this that happen. And you want it to be a little bit smoother when you work, okay? Any questions so far? No? Okay, so the way that you're going to do your color wheel is I just want you first to play. So you're going to do two. You're going to do one, your page should look like mine, okay? Where you do your blue, your yellow, your red, and see how many oranges, how many purples, how many greens you can create with your colors. And if you have more than one yellow, play and see what's going to work for you and what's not going to work, okay? And then we're going to expand on this color wheel a little bit. But for your first one, you don't have to use a ruler, you don't have to do anything, just go for it. Just play for a little bit. Get familiar with the paint, get familiar with your brushes, and then we'll do a nice color wheel. Okay? All right.